Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's Journal for All Seasons, Journaling for Self-Care. I've been thinking a lot about woods and trees. Sorry for the lorry going by. March's Comfort Coverlet, if you're following along with that, the Slow Stitch series on Wednesdays, is about my joyful places, which for me are the beach and woodlands. But also here in the northern hemisphere, we've just passed the spring equinox. That'll obviously be the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. And I'm noticing on my daily walks, every day the leaves on many of the trees are coming out a little bit more, and spring is springing. And the other thing is I've been reading this book, rereading it. I read it many years ago. It's Women Who Run with the Wolves. I know many of you know it. And when I read it years ago, it was kind of interesting on a, brain level, if you know what I mean, intellectual level. But I didn't really feel it. Whereas now, I've just finished it last night actually, and this time I really felt it. So apparently I was really ready for it. So much so that I want to go back and reread some of the passages in it. But the last chapter, and the second to last section, is about the handless maiden and how she goes into the woods. And this is often a theme in fairy stories, as I'm sure you all know. It happens with Vasilisa and the Baba Yaga, and having to go into the woods on a quest of some kind, and the woods is often portrayed as wild and a bit scary and so on, which the forest can be, can't it? But also that it's a place of healing, and these days we talk about forest bathing, don't we? And tree hugging, that's been around a while. Hands up if you're a tree hugger? Me. So anyway, so that all got me thinking about the woods, and there was some lovely words in here which are marked, which are not Clarissa's words, but they're the words of a woman called Opal Whiteley, who wasn't someone I'd heard of, and I've looked her up. And she's got a really interesting story, actually. She was born an American woman, but she lived the later part of her life in London, and she's actually buried in Highgate Cemetery in London. But these were the words. Today near eventime I did lead the girl who has no seeing a little way into the forest, where it was darkness and shadows were. I led her toward a shadow that was coming our way. It did touch her cheeks with its velvety fingers, and now she too does have likings for shadows, and her fear that was is gone. Yeah, I had a little weep last night when I read that, lying in my bed. It just spoke to me so strongly about that concept of somewhere that's fearful. When we're brave and we go forward into it, we find often that's where the most joy, the most learning, the most can be found. And I'm talking figuratively, obviously, as well as literally. So what are we going to do in our journals this week with all that witter waffle? I thought I'll paint. I felt like painting, so I'm going to go with it. I have got my watercolours out because that's what I have. I don't know if you can see everything. Can you see my watercolours? No, they're just out of shot. So I've got these Cotman by Winsor & Newton, but just use whatever paints you've got. You'll have your own favourites. I had brown paper on one side, which was coffee dyed. I wanted it to be very much a spread, so I've gessoed over that. In fact, I've gessoed over both pages because it's just normal sketchbook. Sorry, that's striking 11, it stopped. Just because I want it to be one spread, and there's still a slight difference in colour, but it'll be fine. So I thought what I'm going to do, rather than paint actual trees, which I'm not confident about, I just read some words, I can't remember the quote, but the idea from someone called Seth Godin, which is when you say I can't paint or I can't stitch, I can't whatever, add the word yet. So I'm not good at drawing yet. It reframes it entirely, it doesn't block you. It makes it a journey. I just love that. add the word yet, there you go. So I'm not good at drawing yet. I'm not, you know, as good as I would like to be, let's say. I'm not yet as good as I would like to be. So I'm going to do it very kind of loose and abstract-y, I thought. So I thought what I will do is I'm just going to put some, I'll just do it, shall I? Otherwise I'll be here talking for an hour and I won't have done anything. I'm going to just go into my lovely greens. I'm just slapping water all over the green section just to juice them up a bit. Technical term. I'll show you what I'm doing. I've got a little spritzy bottle somewhere but I can't find it, so I'm just doing it like this. I'm just going over all my greens like so, and then I'm going to do the same over my browns. I don't mind if it gets messy and mixed, but you know, you do you if you want to get paint out onto a palette and keep your paints all nice. So I'm just going to do that just so they're all ready to go, maybe into the ochre and a little bit as well. And also what I nearly always like to use is a bit of Payne's Grey. It's actually my second pan of Payne's Grey since I got this palette, and it's already got a big divot in it. And I'm just going to not really think about painting trees as such. I'm just going to think about getting the essence of woodland. That makes any sense at all? So I'm going to start with my sap green. I would like to use a bigger brush, but my bigger brush has got a great big handle like this, and I don't know if it will work when I'm filming, because if I put things too high it makes it go blurry. I'll give it a try. If I hold it really on its side. And because I've put gesso on, it's going to kind of, you know, play a bit funny, but I'm going to use that. I'll just move it around with some water. But it will help, because it's not watercolour paper, it will help, you know, it not break the paper down too quickly. And I don't really want to do rectangles like I'm doing there, I want to do more shapes. I'm just putting paint on. Let's have some brown, because I feel myself getting a bit like I'm trying to draw a tree. So I'm getting Van Dyke brown and the burnt umber a bit. So I might do this with the brown because that's more trunk-like. So you see I'm nowhere near painting a tree, I'm just slapping the paint on at this stage. And I might think a little bit about light and dark as I go along. I hope this brush, this long handle isn't making it, I'll try and keep it sideways. I don't want it to be making it all blurry for you, and I don't mind that mixing there. See there, I do feel like I'm trying too much to draw a tree. So the other thing you can do is swap hands, use your non-dominant hand. That makes you more, less controlled, unless you're ambidextrous, and then, you know, maybe put it in your teeth. Sorry. If you watched Friday's video, you will have heard me said that I wasn't feeling great, and talking again about the full moon and whether that has an effect. I feel today is actually Thursday, so for you watching Fridays, because I'm filming in advance because my son's coming tomorrow for the weekend, but I already feel much better. I have a bit of this Talo green, which is a bit brighter. And so I do think, you know, I mean, I'm only 2 months into noticing the moon and whether it affects my mood, but today I just felt, went for a walk, the sun was shining, I was noticing the leaves coming out, I just felt better. And there's no apparent reason for that, you know, it's not like something was worrying me and I've sorted it out or anything like that, it's just, you know. Oops, that's a little bit of the problem as well with working in a book, is it runs into the gutter. I did try and make sure that I got gesso right down into the gutter as well. It will reactivate the gesso a bit as well, watercolour, but you know, I'm not bothered. I'm just not bothered about things like that. A bit of emerald. So it looks a complete mess at the moment, but that's fine. That's fine and dandy-o. I'm going to have a bit more brown. I'm going to get some of the sepia and just maybe do this kind of. So I'm not painting trunks. I'm sort of thinking trunks, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? And I'm kind of leaving the middle a bit open because I'm thinking that I've printed out those words that I read to you, and I kind of think I might put them somewhere in the middle. So there's a bit of planning going on, but not much. I'm just having fun with colour. I think up here near the top I might go for the sap green, and I might put a bit of cad yellow in it, and I've now turned my cad yellow green, but you know, doesn't matter, they'll clean off. Just because it's nearer the sun, so it might be a bit lighter up there. So again, I'm not remotely painting trees, but I'm trying to get the feeling of trees. And here I'm going to use my other hand. And that's a good way of keeping the stalk of the stalk. What do you call it? See, I'm really thinking woodland stalk. The handle of the brush out of your way. And even these where it's pooling, it's inviting me to do some dribbling. And then really you don't, well, you have some control over which way you dribble, but not much more than that. This is in a journal, you know, I'm not hanging this on the wall, nobody's sticking it onto their fridge. It's about expressing myself, and that's what I hope to encourage you to do as well, not to be precious, not to think I can't paint, you know, or I can't make anything that looks like anything. You're expressing yourself. It's the feeling of forest going onto the page, and that's all. And it doesn't matter if anybody else looks at it and doesn't get that feeling, you will have the feeling because you did it. It's come from you. It's slightly annoying going over the gutter, but like I said, that's part of the working in a book thing. And this is the first time I've really done a journal like this on a regular basis. I've done more. I'm liking that sap green, but I'm inclined to put it everywhere. Maybe put some dark down at the bottom. So I think when I do this again, I think I might choose all the same paper, because I think the mix of papers, I thought it would inspire me to not, I'm going to do some Hooker's Green dark green, but actually it's kind of restricting me more. I thought it would take the pressure off, you know, that blank page thing, but I think I was thinking more about a sketchbook type thing or whatever. I think because I want to use all different kinds of media in here, I would have been happier if I'd just had, you know, a decent weight sketchbook paper, or maybe a light watercolour paper or a mixed media paper or something like that. But, you know, you live and learn. I'm going with it. It's my journal for the year, and I'm not going to change it now, obviously. I'm making it work. I just might drag some of that through a bit, I'm just thinking about, you know, when the light comes through the trees in the woods, but it's still quite dark, and forms aren't, you know, it's not like when you see one tree in the middle of a field, you see the form and the outline exact. Everything's kind of blended together, and you know what I mean. See, I'm really loving this now. Really loving the look of this side, which makes me happy, because I almost feel that it's nothing to do with me. That makes sense. That's just happened by chance. That's not, you know, not because I'm clever. It's just happened, which is, you know, shouldn't think like that, should we? Just get my clip off a bit so I can get into that corner. I just want some. I always like dark at the bottom. Visually, even in an abstract piece, I've always, you know, like a textile piece or something, I feel that the dark at the bottom, the dark is kind of visually heavier, so it gives the piece more balance if it's darker at the bottom, if that makes sense. But in a wood, of course, you'll have dark at the bottom because of shadow. So I think when I've got, when I finish playing about with the green, I might come in with the Payne's grey, and I'm going to drag some of that as well, because I like that effect of just that dragging effect, which happened kind of by chance, but now you think, yeah, I like that, so I'm going to now do that on purpose. Might try some interesting, you know, movements that aren't necessarily painting as well. So let's get some more slightly lighter green up there. Let's go back to I do love the sap green. And just try doing some different movements if you find yourself getting, you know. What you don't want to do with this style of work is to be here with your brush like this, you know, doing little individual leaves. And that's another thing entirely. That's not what I'm doing here. Let's get some of that gorgeous emerald as well. So I'm just looking for ways that I can really be loose. Do you see this now? That to me is now saying tree. Just by chance, it's just, do you see that? Do you see that sort of form that's emerging? And plus I'm having fun. Which is the most important thing. Let's do some viridian. Viridian. Let's do some over here. See, there's many ways to get a tree without being able to just draw one, or the feeling of a tree, the essence of a tree. Let's do it with some of that paint that's there. And if you feel there's too much paint somewhere and you want to get it off, you can just dab it, you know, get a bit. I just use a bit of rag, or still got my bit of kitchen roll from last week because there's still some unused bits on it. So you can just dab some of that away. And then if you find that you've got loads of paint on your kitchen roll, like I did last week, use that as a tool as well. Try using that, dip it in the sap green. And it's at one point with watercolour, it is an idea to let it dry and do another layer. And I think I might be reaching that point. I could go and blow it with a hairdryer. I do have a hairdryer. I mentioned hairdryers last week about getting the tape off, if you have trouble getting your tape off, because someone had told me and I was passing that on. But I don't use it on my hair. I haven't used it on my hair for years. I let my hair dry naturally. But I do think as well sometimes, not for the tape thing but for this, that it's to let it dry naturally gives you a little bit of breathing space. It can be, I'm really liking that mark that's making now. It can be frustrating, you want to get on, you know, you're in the zone and all that, but that's really saying to me undergrowth. I said I should stop and let it dry, but you see I'm not stopping. Oh, the other thing is I obviously work dry on dry. I wouldn't, wet on dry, sorry. I wouldn't do what they call wet in wet unless I had decent paper, you know, like proper watercolour paper, where you put loads of water on first and you get that much more washy effect. But if you've got proper watercolour paper, you could have a go at that as well, and you know, if you get puddles of water on your paper, you can just sort of drop your paint into it and it will bloom, which is a great word, isn't it, bloom. I'm not going to touch that because I really like that. So I feel I'm getting the kind of impression of a woodland glade, which was sort of what I wanted. And my words can go wherever they go, but I'm just bearing in mind that, you know, I need somewhere for my words. I'm really loving doing this. I'm going to get some more of that slightly darker green down here. And quite pigmented, which just means you've got, you know, more colour than water. You've got more of the colour. Just go over that a bit more, just to darken that up a bit. So now you see I am thinking definitely here's some undergrowth, but I'm not painting undergrowth, I'm making marks that suggest undergrowth. And I think over the other side I'm basically mixing my greens on the pan. I'm sorry you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm basically just sticking it in all the different greens that I fancy. And turn it this way. I'm going to do more of a smeary mark. I mean, you will probably come up with all kinds of different ways to, if you just think outside the box, you know, if you're new to this kind of thing, don't think you have to hold it like a paintbrush and paint with it. It's just a tool for getting the marks onto the paper. And however you use that tool is entirely up to you. See, now I'm dabbing. Like that, which is fun as well. with my left hand. Such fun. Right. I'm just going to do some Payne's Grey, and I'm going to go and watch this to make sure that it's not all blurry because of the brush, and then I'll know if I have to carry on with another brush when I come to put another layer. So the Payne's Grey, I like the Payne's Grey because it's got a bluish tinge to it. So it's not black, you know, it's not matte dense black, and it's just got a kind of warmth to it that is good for shadows, because shadows have that kind of bluish purplish, you know. I'm using a bit of kitchen roll now just to lift it a little bit. Now you see the marks I'm getting with the kitchen roll. Might even put some of those up there. More water. It's a good job I already had water in my jar, because when I took Stella out, the water people were down at the bottom there, and they had the, you know, the, what do you call it, the manhole cover up, and they were doing something, 2 or 3 vans and some workmen. And when I came back from taking Stella for a walk, I went to fill the kettle to make a cup of tea, and the water was off. Luckily there was just enough water in the kettle for me to have a cup of tea. That's a bit too much now. I'm just going to lift some off again. Maybe just blur the edges a little bit. And you can always go over it. You can go over it with more paint. You can go over it with when it's dry, with your colouring pencils. You can collage over it. That's the joy of mixed media. There's nothing bad that can happen that can't be rectified. I'm just going to put a little bit more down here. I think quite a lot down here actually. I feel like I want this corner quite dark. And I might just kind of drag it up a little bit into the green here and there, but not all the way up. Get my bit of kitchen roll again. And just take a bit off here and there. Let's try doing this twisty motion. It's all what ifing. What if I do that, what will happen? What if I do that? That's what I was trying to say. And if you don't like what happens, then do what if something else all over it, over the top of it. I'm not loving this corner. It's a bit too all the same. So it needs more. It's the same, I say it about stitching. The solution is always to add more with me, not to take anything away. Sorry, that's a bit annoying, that tapping noise. That's better. See, that's almost as if I've added another element in front of it, it looks to me. I don't know if it looks like that to you. So I could go a layer further and really darken right down into the very corner. And try not to make the shapes too regular, because woodlands don't really tend to be. And I might just go in with my darkest green, which is that hooker's green really. And bring that a little bit along the bottom. It does dry pretty quick, I have to say. I'm quite liking that like that as well. That's looking like grass, but I don't want it too much a straight line, so I'm just making it go up and down a bit. Like that. And I might continue that over onto the other side with my left hand, very awkwardly. Just, you know, because I want to unite the 2 pages. And a bit more paint. And some on the plate. There we go, that's better. Right, I think I am now going to let that dry. Stop, put your brush down. I'm going to rinse my brush and dry it and not leave it in the water because it's not good for your brushes. And if I rinse it and just leave a bit of water on it, it'll be fine for the half an hour or whatever. I'm going to put this on my paints because Fred is sleeping there, and if he decides to go to the windowsill into the sun and walks all over those lovely wet paints. Okay, so I'll let that dry, and I'll go and check that that video was fine, and then I'll be back once that's dry. It's now dry and the video is fine, luckily, and I've had a little rearrange so you can at least now see my paints, because there was no real need for you to be staring at that plate. Can you see my paints now? Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is just be maybe a little bit more intentional, put some more paint on, but just change things where I want to change them, or add to things where I want to add to them. And I think the first thing I want to do is really put some golds in the middle here, maybe some golds or some lighter greens. So I'm going into this was the cad yellow that I put green in too, just to give the impression of the light filtering through into the little woodland glade, because even though I'm going to put my text there, obviously it won't be covered. Just use my kitchen roll, bit of dabby dabby. Maybe go into it again to get more yellow. Just thinking about, those little patches of sunlight that filter through. Quite strong there, but I don't think I mind. Watercolour usually dries a bit lighter, doesn't it? I quite like those little feathery marks when your brush is really dry and the bristles kind of splay. And get some water and just spread that around a bit, and you can use the fact that it reactivates. I don't really want loads of water in the gutter in case it does soak through. You can use the fact that it reactivates, work with it rather than fighting against it. Just to blend that a bit with what was already there. And make sure I do notice that I have a habit to work here and work here when there's that line there, to really tell myself to work across the line, which is challenging when it's such a deep valley, but there we go. Stop moaning, Catherine. That's better. Let's have some raw sienna as well, which is another colour I use a lot. You can see by the big divot in it. And just dab that around. That's a more kind of opaque, matte, brownish colour. I also see emerging here a kind of horizon. It's not that you can see the horizon because of, the trees, but do you see there's sort of a ground line that's come there? And that's not bad, because there's a thing called the rule of thirds, where a painting's more visually interesting if you have the line a third of the way, either a third from the bottom or a third from the top. It's not exactly, but it's not half. Half is a bit flat and uninteresting. So I might emphasise that line. I might go with my slightly smaller brush and get my Payne's grey and just, I don't really want to draw a line as such, more suggest it or emphasise it. You see that goes really dark, but no matter, because you can just go in with your trusty bit of kitchen roll or your little rag or whatever it is you're using and just lighten it up. Just lift some off or blend it a little bit, just Maybe I'll drag it downwards a little bit. I am very new to this, as you may notice. I'm just sharing with you my own explorations. That's the gas man going by again. And you know what I enjoy doing. This is not a watercolour painting tutorial by an expert, that is for sure. We are art journaling, self-care journaling. There are plenty of other people on YouTube if you want to learn proper watercolour painting. I am not one of them. Disclaimer, maybe I should have said that right at the beginning. Might just go back in very lightly. Not a solid line, but just here and there. Just put a bit more dark in. And now, and I don't think that's straight, which is going to make you seasick when you look at it. I don't know if you can see if I hold it like that, but it's what I've kind of come up with as a way for me to be able to see without putting my head in the way. I think you can see better than if you were looking at the back of my head. I have got an easel somewhere. I don't know how flat it goes, but that's maybe an idea as well, to just put it under a slight angle when I'm filming. So I'm going here and trying to make a little bit more dark there. When you put it under an angle, of course, it will run. So you have to bear that in mind. Oh yes, I quite like that, because I found those trunky things are a bit much. So now they're there, but they're behind. Let's come out a little bit there. I like this, I like what's going on down there. And I quite like this yellow, but I think I need some more of it. So I think I'm just going to go ahead doing that, just putting little bits in here and there. And when I've done all that, I'll come back and share with you what I'm going to do next. So I'm just going to look for areas where I think I want to just add little extra bits and bobs. Maybe to decide here these are tree trunks, so I might, you know, I might do something like get some more brown and just put, you know, some more. And now I've got this ground line, so to speak, I can use that for my trunks to grow from. So that's a little grove of trees in the distance. Try not to have them all finishing in the same place. So I'm not really painting individual trees, but there's a little suggestion there of a grove of trees, if you like. And they don't have to grow from the ground. In fact, I don't think I do want them to come further down. So I'm going to go ahead and do things like that, and I'll come back and show you when I'm done, because I think we've already been going for quite a long time. And there are some other layers I want to add as well. I'll just come back to say that I've done quite a lot of work down in this corner. I've used paint more or less directly off the pan, you know, as thick as possible, and just gone in and I've done some of these kinds of movements, you know, to have kind of a grassy effect. I'm now just thinking more about making a little frame, and then here are my woods in the background, and here's my little clearing where my words are going. So I'm painting now with a bit more intention, but I'm still not painting a deliberate bush or a deliberate tree. And now what I've just started doing is I've mixed up myself a green with my sap green and the hooker's green, which is sort of a bottle green mixed with a more yellowy green. And I'm just putting in over the top of all this here, where I see shapes already that are forming in the paint. Like here I can kind of visualise this might be one particular tree. I can just emphasise that shape. Just with I'm holding the brush quite near the end. So again, I'm not painting an actual tree, I'm just emphasising a shape that's there. So now here's a shape, here's a shape, here's a shape. And maybe down here I'll just do another little lower one. And then I might get a slightly different shade of green, maybe I'll add a bit of yellow in there. And again, I'm mixing them on my pans. If that gives you the heebie-jeebies, you mix them on your palette. And then I might look here and I might say, look, here's a shape forming. So maybe I'll just emphasise that shape with some of this green, like that. So I'm responding to what's there rather than painting a tree on a blank page. And for me personally, and I suspect probably for many of you as well, that's much less intimidating than having a blank piece of paper and having to draw a perfect tree. So I'm quite happy with this area. Here in the middle I think I would like to put something that goes over both pages, because as I keep going on about it you will realise that that is bugging me a bit. So I'm going to do a vague shape there. And remember, tree crowns have all different kinds of shapes. I'm thinking deciduous trees, so they're all more roundy, but you know, if you wanted to have pine trees in there that are more pointy. These are not correct botanical terms, by the way. But even amongst deciduous trees there'll be more spreading or ball-like, or you know, more domed, won't they? If you're not sure about tree shapes and you want to go and have a look, I'm sure if you Google tree shapes or tree outlines or something, something will come up. But you can just, like I said, nobody's going to go in here and go, well, that's a beech tree or that's an oak tree or whatever, unless that's what you want to do. Now, I want this to be more one side than the other, because I don't really, if I put it dead central it will draw more attention to the join in the page. So here's a little shape. I might just what's the word I'm looking for? Emphasize that a little bit more there. So I'll go on doing that. I hope that's enough to give you the idea. I'll go on doing that. I'll define some more little trunks over here and do the same kind of thing down here that I've done there, and then I'll be back again when I've done all that. Okay, I've painted enough. The paper is just starting to break down here and there. It's still a bit wet up here. So instead of carrying on with painting, I've got my pencil crayons out. So I thought I might just go in with some of those. Okay, so I've got all my greens and browns and yellows, whoopsie. Put them in the lid. And so maybe now I'll just going to look where I think I want more detail. And in general, if you want to get perspective, you know, if you're doing a proper thing, a proper piece of art, then you'd put more detail in the foreground and less detail in the background, and that gives the effect of distance. But you know, I'm not really doing proper art, so I'm just fiddling about. It was just to tell you. So I'm just going to go in maybe and make some more definite lines with my crayon, just to give a bit of detail in the foreground. But again, I'm still loose. I'm not drawing individual blades of grass. I'm just giving the illusion of grass, or you know, undergrowth of whatever kind. So I'll go ahead and do that, probably mostly in the foreground, but I might go here and there in the further away part with, I don't know where this pencil came from, I don't even recognise it. Anyway, and maybe put some little highlights where I can see where the paint hasn't, where there isn't thick paint, there's kind of natural little white bits of page still showing. I might just go and colour those in, just take advantage of those to colour them in as highlights. I'm trying to do that without getting my head in your way. Don't dare go here really, because it's still a bit, well, these are watercolour crayons, so they will, pencil crayons, so they will react with the water, and I could do that. I could go, you know, I could put some of this on and then go over that again with water, but like I said, because this is only sketchbook paper, it is beginning to object a little bit. It's held up very well, I must say, with the gesso, but you see there I'm just adding highlights. So maybe now I'm just concentrating on some detail in the foreground, and then just maybe putting in my lightest lights, which are my yellowy colours where the sun's catching, and then maybe as well with my black or a very dark brown I can do my darkest darks, because this will show up really dark. Do you see that dark line coming there. And here where the paint dried quite harsh there, I can blend that with my crayon. And it's just, you know, something else to play with basically. You can justify it however you like, Catherine. You just fancy doing a bit of colouring in. There's the bottom line. So I'll go ahead and do that a bit. Maybe get some green. Just get that green, that's quite a limey green. Maybe here where I did these grassy things with my brush, I can do the same with my pencil, which will make a much finer spiky line. Just make it look a bit more natural and organic. Don't dig too hard, I nearly dug a hole in the paper there. But even, you know, these, I'm holding it like a pencil, but you can also hold it like this. Experiment with holding things different ways. And, you know, like I said earlier, this is a page in the journal. I do want it to be happy with it when it's done. I can't get away from that. But at the same time, it's not going on the wall to be looked at all the time, you know. Sorry for the... I've put a little tin behind just to prop it up a bit so that I can see better without getting my head in the way. Yeah, when it's done and I've put my words on, it's process. Next week I shall turn the page. Not that I won't look back at it, but do you know what I mean? It's not going to be hanging on the wall for me to look at morning, noon and night and judge. It's just the fun of expressing myself, thinking about that woodland thing, and, you know, being a friendly learning place, a friendly place of learning, a joyful place. So I'm just having some joy in creating my little picture. I might get a dark brown and put some more tree trunks, more definite sort of tree trunks in. I might just go over some of those. I might extend them a bit, just to suggest branches and twigs here and there. And there I could, where I made those shapes in the paint, like here, get a slightly darker brown. Here, if I'm imagining this as a tree, I could emphasise that by using my, which could do with sharpening, you know, emphasising my branches and my trunks, my trunk and my branches, I meant to say, sorry. So just putting some details in, but just having fun. I mean, if you were happy with it after you'd finished painting, then stop there, you know, this is just what I fancied doing. And if you really want to get fancy, you can imagine that your light source is coming from here, say. So then you could go with your black and put some shadow in down one side of the trunks. The side away from where your light source is, where you've imagined your light source is coming. And that can add just a bit more form and definition. And then conversely on the upside you could get a very light brown. Have I got a very light brown? I've got this as sort of a raw sienna. And put some highlights on the other side. You know, you can go on as long as you like. You can. It's just as long as you're having fun. So I'm going to go ahead and do some of that, especially over here. Oh, I did, because I mentioned pine trees. I did end up doing 2 or 3 pine trees, so I might give those some more definition. This one here, it went very light here. That was because the paint really started to mix with the gesso behind. But, you know, I'll just work with that. So I'll go ahead and do that. I already can see here from where I'm sitting that this area is now popping out much more and looking much more like some trees rather than just green blobs. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and do my colouring, and I'll be back when I've done that. I've finished my colouring in. I've also got my words all standing by. So basically all I really did, apart from adding some colour, like I said here where the paint was lifting off, sorry, that's my dangles banging on the desk, was I just went in and visualised, you know, I talked earlier about making shapes look like more definite trees, so I decided here's a tree and I put extra paint. So then I went in just very faintly with a brown pencil and just did a suggestion of the trunk and the branches. And I did that with all the different trees, so that it's more than just a green blob, hopefully, and now, you know, it does actually look like a suggestion of trees. I particularly like this area here. Just turned out, you know, I just like it. I think I like those little blobs of darker paint that have dried there. But, you know, overall I've had fun, I'm happy with it. It's no masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, but that wasn't the point. So I hope you're inspired if you are someone who's, you know, a little bit scared of painting, or not scared maybe, but intimidated by it. Just have a go, and have a go in your journal. It doesn't matter. It's, you know, it's just for the fun of doing it and expressing yourself. So now I've got to find somewhere to put all these words, and there's quite a lot of them. So I'm going to have a little play with the layout. I had thought of keeping them in here, but I don't know if there's really room. So I'm just going to have a little play with the layout. I'll probably shorten that, because it might take me a while. I've printed these out, I typed them up, picked a font that I like the look of, typed them up, printed them out on sketchbook paper. I've torn them up and into the lines of the poem, and I've inked the edges, of course I have. Yeah, so I have a play with the layout, and when I'm decided I'll come back. Okay, I think I'm happy with the layout. It's a little bit challenging because it's a lot of words, and obviously I want it to read in the right order. So I'm kind of doing it this way and staggering it a bit so it's not too straight-liney. So I'm going to stick them on one at a time. And probably you don't want to watch me do that. I'm just using a glue stick. Okay, so there's my page for this week. I think it reads, you know, it might be tempting to read down this way and then that way, but you know, I know which way it goes and it's my journal, so it's fine. So I'll just read you the words again. Opal Whiteley. She wrote these, well, there's some controversy, but she claimed to have written these when she was a child, and the little bit that I've read here and there, I'm just inclined to believe her. Today near eventime I did lead the girl who has no seeing a little way into the forest, where it was darkness and shadows were. I led her toward a shadow that was coming our way. It did touch her cheeks with its velvety fingers, and now she too does have likings for shadows, and her fear that was is gone. Opal Whiteley. Apparently the poems were destroyed or torn up by her sister, who was jealous of her talent, and she kept them in a hat box, all the little fragments, and then later on, when it was kind of recognised that they had some worth, she was asked to reassemble them. She had to kind of stick them all back together again, but they were largely written in crayon on paper bags. Yeah, so if you don't know about her, then do look her up. It's a very interesting story. So I hope you have a play with painting. If you're, you know, someone who's not a painter, give it a go. You can, if you don't have paints, you can just go and get a little small set of cheap watercolours. I love to paint sometimes, you know. I'm not great at it yet, not as good as I would like to be yet, but that doesn't stop me doing it. It's fun. So thank you so much for watching, and happy journaling. I'll see those of you who are stitching on Wednesday, which is the last day of our March block, and meanwhile I look forward to you joining me next time for more whatever tales I choose to tell. Thank you so much. Bye bye.